and ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and we respect the peace and friendship treaties, and we are all treaty people. It's my absolute pleasure, alongside my many colleagues, Nova Scotian members of Parliament here today, to be able to host our Prime Minister here, the Right Honourable Mark Carney, as well as the Minister of National Defence, the Honourable David McGuinty, as we reaffirm our commitment and celebrate the work we are doing in defence and to support our armed forces, which has a huge positive impact here in Halifax, in our region, and in Atlantic Canada. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Minister McGuinty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was right. Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Thank you all for joining us. Today is a big day. It's an important moment, one shaped by an ever-changing and complex world. Canada needs to act with strength, purpose, and urgency. We need to be ready to defend, ready to lead, and ready to protect what matters most. Today, we recognize the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces. When called upon, they have always answered. We owe them and their families a great debt of gratitude for their service and their sacrifice. Aujourd'hui, dans un monde de plus en plus instable, nous devons être prêts à défendre notre pays, à protéger notre souveraineté et à assurer la sécurité des Canadiens. This is the beginning of a new era for Canada's defence, one that is stronger, more self-reliant, and built here at home with Canadian workers and Canadian industry. I would now like to introduce the Prime Minister, whose vision, whose determination, and whose leadership has made today entirely possible. Ladies and gentlemen, the Right Honourable Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Thank you, David, for that introduction. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, colleagues, for all being here and for what you do for Canadians every day. It is, let me say to the members, the women and men of the Margaret Brook, the members of the forces present here, also to those members of the forces across Canada, to those members of the forces around the world. On behalf of all Canadians, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you for representing the very best of our country every single day. Since 1759, generations of service members have called this base home. Today, CFB Halifax is Canada's largest military base, home to over 10,000 CAF members. And all those members have taken on enormous responsibilities, knowing that discharging those responsibilities requires extraordinary personal sacrifice, and they're doing so to protect the peace and security of Canada and protect our allies. Yet for too long, instead of reinforcing your strength, we've relied too heavily on your dedication alone to keep Canadians secure. Well, no more. In the first week of the election campaign, my colleagues and I fought, we committed to pay our women and men in uniform properly and to arm them with the best equipment. And we're getting it done. Les principes qui avaient guidé la politique de défense et la politique étrangère du Canada pendant des décennies qui avaient été complètement bouleversés. Les menaces auxquelles nous sommes confrontés sont nombreuses et ne cessent de s'étendre, qu'il s'agisse d'incursions dans notre Arctique ou d'attaques visant notre cyberespace. The very nature of warfare is changing rapidly. It's driven by the proliferation of drones, autonomous systems, weapons in orbit. We know the world has changed, and we know that Canada must change with it. A little over a decade ago, in 2014, Canada's defence spending had fallen to just 1% of our GDP. Our military infrastructure and equipment had aged, hindering our military readiness. And that's why just 6 weeks after forming government, we announced ambitious plans to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces. Our core objective of that plan, not the only one, but a core objective, is to achieve NATO's 2% target this year. That's the highest level of defense spending relative to the size of our economy since the fall of the Berlin Wall. We embarked on this mission to protect Canadians, to defend our territory, to protect our borders, and to boost our sovereignty. Because nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We control our destiny. I am pleased to announce today that we have kept that ambitious promise. For the last 10 months, Canada's new government has been working with unprecedented speed and scale. In 10 months, we have invested over $60 billion in our defense and security. That's the largest year-on-year increase in defense investment in generations. And as a result of these efforts, this morning, NATO confirmed that Canada has achieved its 2% defense expenditure target, half a decade ahead of the original schedule. So the first time, as I said, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, we'll be spending that 2% of GDP on defense. Now, what is very encouraging is not just that Canadians recognize the need to reinforce our security, but Canadians are responding to our renewed commitment and to the call to serve, a call that the women and men here have already responded to. But since the summer of last year, since June, applications to join the Canadian Armed Forces are up 13%. Il faut le dire que l'objectif de 2% ne constitue pas un plafond pour les investissements du Canada dans le domaine de la défense, mais plutôt une référence. En juin, nous avons convenu d'investir 3,5% dans les dépenses militaires et 1,5% de plus dans les dépenses d'infrastructures essentielles comme les routes et les ponts. To accelerate our efforts, today we're announcing a package of infrastructure and real property investments across Atlantic Canada worth more than $3 billion. In Nova Scotia, we're making major targeted investments to modernize critical infrastructure, to build new facilities to support the next generation of naval and air fleets, and to expand our training and operational capacity. To be specific, we're investing over $1 billion to modernize the heating, electrical, fire protection systems at CFB Dockyard and Stadacona. We're investing $640 million in a new contract at 14 Wing Greenwood to build the hangar and the drone infrastructure needed to support Canadian multi-mission aircraft. There's over $180 million to build the Combatant Training and Integration Centre, obviously supporting training, operations, and integration for the Royal Canadian Navy's future River-class destroyers. There's more than $80 million to acquire Halifax Gate, a massive waterfront industrial site in Dartmouth that will support current and future Canadian Royal Navy operations. And we're acquiring new residential units in Nova Scotia for Canadian Armed Forces members and their families. In New Brunswick, we're investing more than $1 billion in CFB Gagetown to recapitalize our primary Army training area, introduce new ground-based air defense systems, and ensure our soldiers train on infrastructure built for the next century. We're upgrading our transition centers in the province for CAF members and their families, because every member of our forces deserves a safe, high-quality place to call home. This $3 billion package we're announcing today reaffirms Canada's new approach to support and invest in our armed forces. And I want to take a few minutes to outline that approach. It rests on 4 pillars. The first is to invest in the foundations, the very foundations of our defense. It's where I started. The women and men who serve and the equipment and infrastructure that they use. Secondly, we're expanding and enhancing our military capabilities. Third, while we do so, we're strengthening Canada's defense industry. And finally, we're diversifying our defense partnerships. Our greatest strength is the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. They carry the flag. They risk their lives for us and for our values. Their pay should reflect the weight of their responsibilities. And that's why we implemented the largest pay raise for the Canadian Armed Forces in a generation, with all members of the CAF receiving a pay rise. Those pay rises were retroactive to April 1st of last year, and they were increases on top of base pay, putting more money in the pockets of all members. We also introduced a new military service pay benefit, specifically tied to time in service, so paychecks honor years in uniform. Et si les membres des forces armées sont appelés à intervenir sur le territoire canadien en cas d'inondation, de feux de forêt ou d'autres catastrophes, nous reconnaissons aujourd'hui l'importance des services qu'ils nous rendent en leur accordant une augmentation de salaire. Une rémunération plus élevée est synonyme d'une meilleure résilience financière, d'une plus grande stabilité, d'un plus large choix de carrière pour les conjoints et davantage de possibilités pour les enfants afin de réaliser leurs rêves. The second pillar of our strategy is expanding and enhancing those military capabilities. We're overhauling the very way we arm our Canadian forces, so they have the tools they need to keep Canadians safe. Over the next decade, Canada will unleash $500 billion, I'll repeat, $500 billion in defense and defense-related investment, from submarines and aircraft to drones, sensors, and radar systems. We will build the essential infrastructure that our security needs. I'll give an important example. Less than 2 weeks ago, Minister of National Defense and other colleagues and I were in Yellowknife. I want to say that it was considerably colder than it is today. It was minus 35. We were in Yellowknife. We announced a $40 billion investment in Canada's North and Arctic. New military infrastructure, from northern operational support hubs to the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Grays Bay Road and Port Project, which effectively link our high Arctic assets, military assets, civilian assets, to south of 60. Today, we know that sovereignty requires much more than just conventional defense. It requires reliable access to critical strategic capabilities, such as space-based communications and unhindered access to artificial intelligence. It requires digital sovereignty, beginning with sovereign cloud and extending through the entire intelligence infrastructure stack. So defense spending and defense-related spending includes things like our Quantum Champions program that's supporting cutting-edge technology and intellectual property in Canada. It includes our $200 million investment in sovereign space launch capabilities, which will mean that Canada will have our own access to space. We don't have to depend on another country. Through Borealis, we're coordinating and accelerating Canada's defense research and innovation in frontier technologies, including quantum and AI. So from domestic ammunition production, such as Colt, and over-the-horizon radar to quantum to AI and drones, we're building with Canadian materials, Canadian expertise, and Canadian workers all across this country. L'autonomie stratégique n'est pas un synonyme d'isolement. Elle consiste à être suffisamment fort pour être un partenaire de choix plutôt qu'un partenaire dépendant. Elle consiste à mettre en place une base industrielle de la défense nationale afin de ne jamais devoir dépendre des décisions des autres pays. So the third pillar of our mission is to strengthen our domestic industrial base. We've launched the Defense Investment Agency to streamline procurement, cut duplicative approvals, and get the Canadian Armed Forces members the equipment they need fast. It's already delivering results. Last week, Minister McGuinty and Secretary of State Fuhrer announced a new contract to Kitchener-based Colt Canada to procure 65,000 new rifles for the forces, replacing the current stock, which, has to be said, has been in service for more than 35 years. Last month, we announced Canada's first ever defense industrial strategy, a bold plan to get our forces what they need when they need it, and to scale at the same time Canadian defense industrial companies putting hundreds of billions of dollars to work in the strategic sectors of our economy, creating more than 125,000 jobs for Canadian women and men. Our framework's simple. Build, partner, buy. We're focused first, and this is a big change, we're focused first on building in Canada, directing procurement to Canadian firms where we have those capabilities. Where we can't build, we'll partner with like-minded allies, and do so in a way that attracts inbound investment, transfers intellectual property, and integrates supply chains so that public dollars flow back to Canada. And only in those cases, and they will exist, but only in those cases where we've exhausted those first two options will we buy from a diverse range of partners abroad. As I said, our defense industrial strategy is designed to create over 125,000, not just jobs, but high-paying careers, and all the while double our investment in defense R&D. The final element of our strategy is diversifying those defense partnerships. We've already agreed a comprehensive strategic partnership with the European Union, and we're the only non-EU country to join SAFE, which is their defense procurement arrangement. We've signed 20 defense and trade partnerships on 4 continents over the past 10 months. Mes collègues, aux femmes et aux hommes des forces armées canadiennes, vous servez notre pays. Vous faites des sacrifices. Vous assurez la sécurité du Canada. Vous incarnez ce qu'il y a de meilleur dans ce pays. Au cours de la dernière année, j'ai visité des bases militaires, des sites d'opération à travers le pays et dans le monde entier. À Halifax, à Trenton, ainsi qu'à Yellowknife, à Nanu's Bay et Esquimalt. De l'opération Rassurance en Lettonie à l'exercice Cold Response dans le nord de la Norvège. J'ai pu constater par moi-même votre courage et votre dévouement envers votre mission. Mes collègues et moi-même sommes déterminés à nous assurer que vous disposez de tout ce dont vous avez besoin pour servir notre pays. To conclude, in moments of crisis, when people see the maple leaf on a sleeve, they see hope and they get help. Whether that's training Ukrainian soldiers or standing on guard for Canada in the Arctic. Over the past 11 months, our government's key priority has been to reinvest, rebuild, and rearm the Canadian Armed Forces to provide you with the support you need to achieve every mission's success. We're just getting started. We'll continue with our efforts at the same speed and determination we've shown from the very beginning. In this century, the work of defending Canada is also the work of building Canada. Security and prosperity aren't competing priorities, they're mutually reinforcing foundations of a strong and sovereign Canada. The true North, strong and free. Because in the end, in a more fractured and darker world, Canadian leadership will be defined not just by the value of our strength, but by the strength of our value. or value of our strength, sorry. I'm going to redo that. I'm going to redo that. Because it will not just be, our leadership will not just be defined by the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. Because this is the key point. The foundation of strength is standing around me and behind me. And it's on that strength that we're building Canada strong and free. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Nous allons maintenant passer à la période de questions. We'll now move on to questions from the media. Prime Minister, first question, Canadian Press.
Mike McDonald, Canadian Press. Prime Minister, the former Defence Minister Bill Blair had said that Canada wouldn't be able to meet the 2% target by the end of this fiscal year because of procurement challenges. What has happened to change that?
Well, you know, it's focus. It's the focus on the priority. We came into office, well, we ran for office recognizing the world had changed, recognizing the importance of securing Canada, defending Canada, fulfilling our commitments, starting with our commitments to the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces, as I've been emphasizing. So we're great believers. I'm a great believer is you set your priorities, you focus on them, you follow through. I think the second thing that's changed, and we're just starting to see this begin, is this link between our investments in defense and how we're building out the strength of Canadian firms, the Canadian economy. We're here in Nova Scotia. Defense has been at the heart here for centuries. I'm going to be visiting INP Aerospace in a few hours. That's another example. There's many, many examples here, and we're going to see the impact of this spend multiply through our economy across Atlantic Canada, across Canada. So just to go back to your question, I think what changed is the focus, having a clear strategy, and you know, we come back to this day after day after day, including all the members of Parliament here and across the country. We're very focused on making sure that we're making the most of the many strengths of this country. Thank you.
Next question, Kisson.
I'm Heidi Petrachik with Global National. Wondering how you're going to reach specifically the 5% of GDP by 2035 if we just got to 2%.
Yeah. So there's a couple things, Peggy, if I may, which is one is that the 5%, and we were part of the negotiation to craft it this way, it's divided into two parts. So when you look at the 2% that we're spending now, it's core defense. And that needs to go, and this is a big move, it needs to go from 2 to 3.5% of GDP, and our economy is obviously going to be bigger at that point, but it needs to go to 3.5% by 2035, so in 10 years. The other 1.5% is spending on defense-related, well, the language is industrial or resilience. So I'll give you a few examples of where that's happening. I referenced a moment ago the announcement we made 10 days ago in Yellowknife. The Department of the Forces and Department of Defense are setting up northern operating support hubs. These act as support for Canadian forces, but they also provide some capacity that supports local activities. That would include education, healthcare, wastewater, other components. That is necessary to have the hub, but it also is something that supports that's some of our investment in defense being tested there. Don't be alarmed. It's all part of the plan. But also investment that's relevant there. Let me give you another example, which is that we don't have, or as we build out some of these capacities, we need to link them with corridors, transportation corridors. Some of that spending is there as well. And then the last example I'm going to give, and it's a huge area, spend on cyber, spend on artificial intelligence, on quantum. Yes, there are defense applications, but there are domestic applications. And so if we do this right, and this is why we are so focused on it, we do this right, yes, we protect Canadians, we meet our responsibilities to our allies, but we do it in a way that has huge extra benefits for Canadian economy. Yes, the job specifically, but if we're better in AI, we're better in cyber, we're better connected in the north, we have better flood defenses, all those factors, we have a better country, and that's how we're going to meet it.
Mr. Premier ministre,
Next question.
Oui.
Juste
Question,
répéter
question.
en français aussi
La même
pour le
question, en effet.
5 comment on va y arriver pour le 5
OK. Premièrement, il faut diviser l'objectif de l'OTAN, c'est le 5 du PIB, mais c'est 3,5 de dépenses traditionnelles dans la défense. OK. Maintenant, nous sommes 2 de PIB à partir de maintenant, et il faut augmenter le pourcentage à 3,5 Il y aura des grandes... des investissements importants dans cela. It wasn't in English, but I'll add this. Je vais ajouter, par exemple, les sous-marins. Ce sera, des milliards, des dizaines de milliards de dollars pour des 12 sous-marins, par exemple. Les avions, d'autres avions, il y a d'autres systèmes, par exemple, le radar, des autres aspects de radar. Alors, il y a des grands systèmes nécessaires afin de protéger le Canada. Premier point. Deuxième point, et c'est la plupart de ma réponse à madame, c'est les investissements pour dual use, en effet. Il y a deux aspects. Il y a un aspect de défense, mais un aspect de la résilience de notre économie. Par exemple, les ports, des nodes opérationnels dans l'Arctique. Il y aura 7 exemples de tout cela. Et dans ce contexte, on va investir dans la santé, l'éducation, des choses de dual use, en effet. Et troisièmement, le troisième aspect, ce sera des investissements dans l'intelligence artificielle, le quantique, le cyberespace, les défenses de cyberespace. Et dans tous les cas, oui, c'est nécessaire pour la défense de notre pays, mais il y aura des grandes retombées dans l'économie canadienne. Si on a un plan, et le nouveau gouvernement du Canada, nous avons un plan. Nous avons un plan pour tout cela.
Maintenant, ma question, les contribuables canadiens financent ces dépenses militaires. Pourtant, il y a très peu de transparence sur les activités des forces armées canadiennes. Votre gouvernement s'est dit prêt à aider ses alliés dans le détroit d'Ormuz, mais vous refusez de donner des détails. Dans quelle mesure est-ce que le Canada peut intervenir dans la région?
Il y a quelques aspects de votre question, et je vais essayer de répondre à tous les aspects. Premièrement, en ce qui concerne les détails, au fond, c'est simple. C'est une question de garder les hommes et les femmes de Forces armées canadiennes sains et saufs. Okay? Il y a un moment de dévoiler les détails des événements là. Pas nécessairement en temps réel. Parce qu'il y a une guerre là. Il y a une guerre. C'est pas une situation normale du tout. Il y a c'est très dangereux. Alors, c'est nécessaire. Par exemple, il y avait pendant la semaine, il y a quelques jours dans le passé, il y a un déplacement de toutes les forces de l'OTAN, y compris quelques individus canadiens de l'Irak. Et l'annonce a été faite après le déplacement. C'est pas une bonne idée de dire en même temps, OK? Alors, ça, c'est la politique du gouvernement du Canada. Et le premier job est de garder la sécurité des hommes et des femmes dans une région en conflit, OK? Ça, c'est le premier aspect. Mais le deuxième aspect, c'est une question de... votre question concerne détroit d'Ormuz. Alors, il y a des conversations avec nos partenaires de l'OTAN, quelques partenaires de l'OTAN, en ce qui concerne qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire avec une cessez-le-feu. Au moment où il y aura un cessez-le-feu, afin de rétablir le mouvement des navires. Et ça, c'est la conversation. C'est des conversations continues. Il y a des conversations opérationnelles et des conversations, par exemple, des ministres des Affaires étrangères. Il y a une réunion qui déroule maintenant à Paris des ministres des Affaires étrangères du G7 maintenant. Alors, on verra, mais ce n'est pas le moment pendant un conflit. Ce n'est pas la politique du Canada.
Question, question. Next question.
Jacob Moore with Acadia Broadcasting. We're talking about defense-related infrastructure.
Yeah.
And gas prices here are spiking because of the war in Iran. What are you doing to fix that? And especially considering that the largest oil refinery in our country is in New Brunswick. Is it time for the west to east pipeline?
You packed a lot in there. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. The first thing is that very aware of the sharp increase in gas prices. It varies a bit as you know geographically, but on average it would have been sub 130 a liter. It's going up. It's in 180 to 2, a bit higher in Quebec, a little over $2 a liter. So that is a big shift, and that's a real squeeze. And absolutely recognize this. So we're following that closely. It depends, of course, as your question indicated, how long this conflict goes on. And we are not actively engaged in the conflict. We're calling for de-escalation. We're supporting efforts to de-escalate. There's a variety of ways we can do. There's also a limit, obviously, for what we can do diplomatically to influence that. So that's the first thing. The second is we have been very focused on improving the pouvoir d'achat, the capacity of Canadians, cut taxes for 22 million Canadians, put in place the groceries and essential benefits that just actually passed through the House, which for 12 million Canadians, family of two, family with 2 kids, a family of 4, $1,800 a year additional benefit from that. Maintaining a series of other social programs are providing important benefits as well. But we will continue to look at. We will look at this as the conflict evolves, and most importantly, as the impact on Canadians is there. So, I'm not saying that's necessarily the final word. Your question about energy, I'm going to broaden it to a question of energy infrastructure. So whether it's necessarily the East-West pipeline or more broadly, building out more rapidly our considerable energy assets here. We're in Nova Scotia. I'll be meeting with the Premier tomorrow. One of the things we'll talk about is Wind West. The huge opportunity here to get renewable power, cheap power that will build out. We also have opportunities on the East Coast in conventional energy, which we'll be exploring to build that out, and across this country. And I'll make one last point. I'm sorry I've gone on too long, but there will be opportunities in some of these cases where it will be defense related to build out and to unlock some of these opportunities. And I'm thinking particularly when we look at Port of Churchill, for example, and some of the, we've already seen this actually in terms of hydro investments in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. Thank you.
Next question. Question, question.
Hi, Linus Mulhern, CBC News.
Hi.
The RCMP commissioner has said he regrets an extensive spying program that targeted hundreds of Indigenous people. Should the RCMP explicitly apologize for what went on?
I didn't see. I apologize. I haven't seen his exact comments. Yes, there should be an apology. I would have. I didn't see the full comment that he made, but Commissioner Duham is. He's a good person, and as you would expect, as the commissioner, and I believe that was the intent of what he said. But I apologize, I haven't seen the specifics. But obviously, it's reprehensible practice. Never should have happened. Never would happen.
Next question. Question, question.
Hi, Prime Minister Callum Smith with CTV. Energy companies say your reforms will not lead to making Canada an energy superpower, as you've repeatedly stated. If your government and Alberta's can't even meet a self-imposed deadline fully on this MOU, what message does that send to potential investors, and why should Canadians ever believe you'll actually turn Canada into an energy superpower?
That's a great question. A couple things. One, you may have missed the announcement with Alberta and the federal government yesterday agreement in principle on methane reductions, which follows up on an announcement we made a few weeks prior to that. Alberta and the federal government agreed on a cooperation agreement. Both of these elements are critical components of the MOU, which we signed in November. So we're making lots of progress, as the Premier of Alberta has referenced as well. She and I are both personally engaged in moving this forward as our officials. So the first thing is we're moving forward. Second thing is let's look at what's happened while this government's been here. LNG 1, largest LNG project, has gone operational. We've approved Silicim, which is another major LNG program. We've approved the largest uranium development in Canada's history, which is Rook. We've approved Denison. We've approved a pipeline, a gas pipeline between Alberta and British Columbia. We are advancing on Pathways, which is a fundamental game changer in terms of carbon capture and storage. We are, just referenced discussions we're having with the province of Nova Scotia on Wind West, which is 50 to 60 gigawatts of renewable wind power. We've come to an agreement with Newfoundland on Beta North, which is one of the biggest offshore oil developments in the country. We'll be releasing next week our electricity strategy, which looks to double the electricity grid in this country, largely with clean power, hydro, nuclear, and renewables. There'll be a bit of gas, but effectively with that. So we're moving forward on all fronts, and we have not been in office for a year. Okay? So, and the only reason I'm stopping is there's other people in the line who have more questions.
Next question.
Yeah.
Amanda Fraser, All Nova Scotia. How close is the federal government in making a decision on the new submarines, and what role would Halifax sort of play in preparing for those submarines and maintaining them?
Great question. So we're in the quiet period of that process, where the final submissions from the two bidding consortiums, Korean and then a German, Norwegian, as you know, they came in the first week of March. So all of the materials are in. That's being run through the independent process, and those bids are being evaluated. The guidance that the minister, who is standing behind me, so he will correct me if I'm wrong here, but the guidance the minister has given is by the summer, so by the end of the second quarter, we would expect to make that decision. Part and parcel, let me answer your question in a general but important way, which is, first and foremost, we want to have the right submarines that fulfill the operational responsibilities they will have, which very much include operating in the toughest conditions in the world, in the Arctic, long times under the Arctic ice, all that. Both of the final bids already meet those standards. That's why they got to the final. So they're going to be, whatever we choose will be the right subs to defend Canada and fulfill our obligations. Related, though, is, of course, value for money for Canadian taxpayers, and to your question, is the benefits that come in Canada. How much is going to be built in Canada? A big element of what you asked, I believe, is where are these submarines going to be serviced, because they rotate through service over time, and they'll last for decades. So where are they going to be serviced? What are the other industrial benefits that are related to but not directly tied to the submarines? We've talked a bit this morning about space, about AI and other factors. Not AI so much, but space and surveillance and other factors, and that will be a component of the decision-making process.
We'll have time for your last question. Dernière question, Global.
Hi, Angela Capobianco, Global News Halifax. So I know you had mentioned you're meeting with the Premier of Nova Scotia tomorrow. I guess I'm just wondering how these investments in defense will really benefit Halifax and Nova Scotia as a whole.
Well, it's thanks for the question, because it's a very important point, and it is something. Again, we start always with, we want to have the right equipment. These people making sacrifice, putting their lives on the line, might have to have that, so it has to meet that bar. But as soon as it meets that bar, we want to have the maximum economic benefit and impact that's happening here. So, you think about what we're doing in and around excuse me, in and around Nova Scotia. We don't have to get my orientation right to go to the Irving shipyard right there. Go out towards the airport. Cody knows the exact, Cody Boyce will know exactly where we need to go, as does Sean, to see IMP Aerospace and the servicing contracts that are there. The previous question in terms of what's going to happen with the submarines and how that links in. The research that's being done at the great universities in Nova Scotia that are relevant to autonomous systems, to cyber, to other components that are there. Then there's just some very large, I referenced $3 billion, some of that is in New Brunswick, but the bulk of it is in Nova Scotia, $2 billion or so is in Nova Scotia. There's a big component of this which is infrastructure. So it's going to be direct, very quickly spent infrastructure money, which ensures that we can expand out from there. So I'm scratching the surface, to be honest, of where it's going to go. And I think the other thing I'll say, which is kind of tie together a couple of the questions, which is there are a few major weapon systems, if I can put it that way, that we have to decide upon, submarines being an obvious one. But as we're moving towards that higher level of defense preparedness, there's a lot of decisions still to be made. And we're going to do that as quickly as necessary, but no faster. And deliberately build those out and do it in a way, this is our intention, and I think we're already starting to see this, that builds real industries and careers. And so, you know, for younger people here in Nova Scotia, across Atlantic Canada, look, there's a clear message, and we're seeing it with recruitment, that 13% up in recruitment, clear message in terms of careers in the Canadian Forces. But there's also a clear message that in the areas related to defense, which is a very broad, there's going to be a very regular, deliberate investment year in, year out that is going to make this country stronger, make the economy stronger. So there's a lot of opportunity that's coming from this, and a government that's dedicated to make sure we realize all the benefits of that.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
En français, il y a des retombées ici à Halifax. Il y a plusieurs investissements qui auront un impact direct, par exemple, dans le domaine de l'espace. Deuxièmement, en ce qui concerne, c'est presque sûr, les investissements aux sous-marins, le deuxième aspect, la recherche dans les universités, un autre exemple. Et il y a, point final, un grand montant des investissements à court terme seront dans l'infrastructure. L'infrastructure des bases, des ports, tout cela. Alors, il y aura des bons jobs là, mais en somme, deux messages pour les jeunes. Il y a maintenant des bonnes carrières aux forces armées canadiennes. Et ça va continuer. Et deuxièmement, il y aura des grands investissements, année après année après année, décennie après décennie, dans ces domaines. Alors, c'est nécessaire, mais c'est excitant. C'est excitant pour la Nouvelle-Écosse et pour le Canada. Bon.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
C'est ce qui m'a fait la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup. Press conference.